I don't know how to describe it other than like a demon type of sound.
But it's silhouetted, hulking, every bit of 5.5 feet wide, 13 to 14 foot tall, pitch black.
The one thing that ran through my mind when I had this encounter was I don't have a big enough gun.
Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hello everyone, welcome to Bigfoot, America's Creek Devil. Ben is joining us for the second part of his interview. Tom, would you like to make an announcement before we get started?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. And if you like the show, let us know. You guys know what to do. Just click the like and subscribe if you haven't done that already. It feeds that super hungry algorithm from YouTube and Google. And I want to welcome aboard Gary. He just joined us on Patreon. And if you want to become a strategic partner with us, it helps us to help you guys to bring you the content. And how do you do that? Well, if you're watching us on YouTube, in the description, there's a link. You just click on it and follow your nose. Or you can just, on your web browser, just go to patreon.com/Creek Devil. Same link and follow your nose, and it's much appreciated. So with that said, Will, I'm going to hand the mic back to you, and we'll hear what Ben has to say.
Well, Ben, thanks for coming back for the second part. I'm not sure where we left off, but I'll turn the microphone over to you.
Now I got to sit there and remember now. We were discussing so many different things there. I think I just bring in the points, some of the interesting stuff that's happened to me out there and on some of these sites. I think I've had a couple things like the infrasound. This is what got started me in some of the research of infrasound. I actually had something happen out there to me. Now, I talked to other researchers, and they kind of, says, well, maybe it was this or maybe it was that. I know it's hard to prevail somebody who hasn't had this happen to them or anything. I think Tom has had something close to that, and I never got to really discuss it with him. But anyway, I was out in the woods all day on a particular site. It's Charlie's site again. And I was out there looking around and stuff for evidence and everything. And I decided to go back to RV, and which I usually do is wait till night, dusk, everything, start setting equipment out there and everything going on. So in the meantime, I kind of just, during the day, to sit back and go back to my RV and take a nap or eat or whatever like that. And this particular time, I actually went back and took a nap, and I was laying there sleeping and everything. And my wife, she, like myself, she smokes. She was out there, I think she's getting ready to do dinner or something like that, and she was out at the back of the motorhome. And this particular motorhome, I had an older model. It had the door was on the back end, and it was facing out towards the woods and everything. And she was out there, and I was like I said, I was laying down taking a nap, and I was taking a really good nap actually, power nap is what I call it. Anyway, she had heard something out there, and she come running into the back of the RV, and she's yelling to get me up, and she says, hey, there's something out there. So I'm kind of like, okay, whatever. So I grabbed my phone. I think it was my phone, and I proceeded to jump off the back of my RV and go run into this spot. She says, it's right over there. She heard a lot of noise and brush movement and everything. And I know sooner than hit the ground that I got physically sick. I mean, really, really bad. I was projectile vomiting, actually, but like I says, I just took a couple steps, started projectile vomiting, and it kind of just toppled me over, and I basically almost had to crawl back into the RV, and this went on for like 12 hours. I didn't feel any kind of jolt or anything like that, and I was perfectly healthy before this incident. And
yeah, did it just hit you like somebody hit a light switch?
Yeah, and I didn't feel, like people talk about being zapped or whatever. There's no zapping or whatever when you have this feeling. It was just hit me. And like I said, before I hit the ground, I was already sick.
Hey, Ben?
Yes.
Did it affect your wife any?
No, and that's what's so strange about it. I was actually sitting there thinking about it tonight. I said, you know what? She was standing there right next to me, and it didn't affect her, which is so strange.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That was very similar to sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to agree with you. That was very, very similar to the experience I had when I think it was infrasound. I've just at the drop of a hat, I suddenly got ill, like the worst case of the flu I'd ever had. I wasn't vomiting, but I had nausea, disorientation, and just all the symptoms of the flu. Got a buddy of mine, we've had him on the show. Will knows the guy, a retired cop up in Washington State, and it's happened to him a couple times. It was two of the guys that I was with had been medics in the military, and we went through the whole. They're not skeptics by any stretch of the imagination. They just wanted to go through and eliminate. Was it dehydration? Was it hyperadrenaline? Something like that. And I don't know, but I just know that it came on very suddenly. I hydrated myself. That didn't do anything. But once we left the area, I was fine. When we came back, I was fine. So anyway, that's just kind of confirming. That was my little experience. So I'll let you get back to telling us about what you experienced.
And I've had all the symptoms, and this is the sickest I've ever been in my life. So, I mean, I'm 62 years old, so you'd think I would know, something like this would come on. It was just not natural or whatever. But the problem was I couldn't leave the area. I literally crawled back into the RV, got into the bed, and I just every 10 minutes I was back up getting sick again. And I had to just deal with this. I could, at the time, I never, considered it infrasound or whatever at the time. But like I says, it was miserable. 12 hours. This went on clear till 6 o'clock in the morning. I got up, and then I was perfectly fine. I mean, it's like just finally just faded off. But it was terrible. And again, it happened actually a week later in a different spot down the road. And I was actually out there at this time. It was dark. And I actually had some equipment set up, and I was actually having some activity right across the road from me. And I was just recording all that. And all of a sudden it just happened again. I thought, oh my God, here we go again. So, and this actually only lasted like 4 hours. And again, I couldn't leave the area because my wife couldn't drive the RV at the time. So I was kind of just stuck with this, but it wasn't as bad, but I had the same stuff going on. And actually, it was actually recorded, the whole incident about me getting sick out there and everything. And I was asking what my research friend was asking me about it. And he says, because I had forgot I had sent him this thing because I was more interested in the audios I was getting. And he was talking about, were you getting sick at the time? I said, yeah, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you about that. I was getting really, really sick. But this is the only two incidences I've had happen out there. This, and I've said I've never been this sick in my life, and both times it was just instantaneous. There's no, electricity feeling or buzzing or anything. Right. And I hadn't eaten. The first time I hadn't eaten at all, and I wasn't dehydrated. I mean, I had my pop and everything, water, everything out there, and there was nothing to trigger any of this. It's just something that comes on at out there. And this is actually not what caused me to start doing the infrasound research. Is when I happened to be out there a few years later, and I just noticed that the area is super quiet. I thought, I wonder what causes that, because you get that real creepy feeling or whatever out there. It's just an uneasy feeling, but it's so quiet that you can actually, hear yourself breathe out there, and it says the animals are not responding. It's not like natural. And I think, and I got to thinking about it, and I said, well, what causes that? So I started doing some reading and everything, and that's how I got into the infrasound. Now, I've had other people affected different ways out there. I actually had another research friend where I would say, when you're talking about the paranormal aspect, he started getting into this mind-speaking thing. I've never had that happen out there to me or anybody else. but he was getting headaches also. And so I happened to be out there, and I actually had already got a handheld monitor on infrasound, and I just noticed that we were being bombarded by, 7.5, 11, 11.5, 13, just constantly a lot of infrasound out there. So I like to think that this is what's related to his, his experience. It says that, so I kind of explained, well, nobody else is getting mind speaks or, having this kind of stuff happen and everything. And he seems to be affected by it a lot. It just happened to be during these certain times that we were picking up infrasound out there.
Yeah, I have never experienced anything close, remotely like mind speak. Just at one time, it was like, and I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I just, we encountered this thing, and within 30 to 60 seconds at the most, all of a sudden, boom. And I think it affects different people differently. But, I wasn't actually throwing up, but I was definitely not feeling good.
But it puts you down, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You can't do anything about it, and this is one of their abilities. It's this strange. It's kind of mind. Mind. I should say. It's just difficult to counteract anything like that. That's the whole thing.
I'd love to have something that you could return the favor back to them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'd love to do that. Yeah. I always think about that in the back of my mind, but.
Well, we've experienced that absolute silence at times. I remember first time we were up there, and you had commented usually at this time of night. This was up around where the brush piles were. That at this time of night, there's usually a lot of chatter with the ruckus going on with the animals getting ready to bed down for the night. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I've experienced that often over the years. One of the things I picked up, though, was watching the show Swamp People, and they were talking about in some areas where the really big alligators were. On the show, they commented about how quiet, how silent it was. And oftentimes that's associated with a large dominant predator in an area. That other animals will be extremely silent when that particular animal is in the vicinity.
Yeah, well, you did it. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Will, you did an interview years ago, long before I joined up with you. And I just remember you guys were talking about this and what was the purpose of the silence. And, the guy that was interviewing you said, oh, it's, they're like, oh, heck no. We're going to keep our mouths shut with this thing around.
I don't remember the interview, but it's, that's true.
And it seems to happen a lot out there. And in this particular, it seems to be certain areas that we're picking this up, and mostly we call it the Yankee site. We'll get this experience out there quite often where it's like, it's just completely quiet. It seems like even the mosquitoes are quiet, and it's unusual. And a lot of people talk about this. It's like they get that creepy feeling in regards to, they like somebody's watching them or anything. And there's a lot of stuff associated with infrasound. And like I said, we are picking it up out there. Now, what I'm trying to is concerned if it's differentiated from a natural phenomena, like, water sources and wind can cause all this. There's a lot of stuff, but we seem to be really bombarded by a lot of infrasound out there. I mean, this in different levels and just constant infrasound.
Hey, Ben?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you use Red Vox to capture that?
No, I switched to the infrasound 20, the Infra 20. Because it'll light up and everything and tell you don't have to sit there and watch the monitor all the time. It will light up and let you know that there's infrasound coming up.
Cool.
I also use the handheld, which is I think it's JTS, and I'll have to look at that to make sure. And
Redbox is pretty good. They have an app now you can put on your phone.
Oh yeah, you know what? You're right about that. I did use that in the first beginnings of that to see if there was something coming on there. I don't know if I really trusted it because it was an app.
Right.
But I did use. I kind of used like everything out there just to make sure. I used the handheld, the Infra 20, which is is strictly for infrasound, and you can also capture the image of it, and watch a graph, and you can actually. Since infrasound, the way it travels and everything, it's got a secondary wave. You can actually get the distance from the target, whatever's causing the infrasound. You can actually measure the distance. So if it's
That's
like
cool.
50 meters out there, that's why I like to use that kind of thing. So it's something more for documentation too. So you can use it and capture the image and say, "Oh, look, we got infrasound coming in here."
Does
But-
it save that information if you want to go back later and check it out?
Yes, you can save it from here to eternity. You can put it down, like I said, we can put it in part of our data and everything. I'm still trying to use. I just started doing this a few months ago, so I'm trying to get more precise with the instrumentation on it, just to make sure, take pictures of what happens. But sometimes you get helicopters coming over, jets will put off infrasound. So if you get a jet in there or something, you got a total different, more data coming in. So
Right.
you just kind of, and you also have to go through and eliminate the sources too, because like I said, there's natural occurrences out there, like wind and water and whatever.
Yeah, Bigfoot should always be the last thing on your mind that's
Right.
causing it.
Yep, that's completely correct. You want to try to eliminate all the sources first before you go out there and say, "Oh, this is Bigfoot" or whatever. So until you do that, it's still just, inconclusive. So
Yeah.
and you bring up a good point we were talking about earlier, is that you wonder why it doesn't affect everybody the same way, or there's other people there's not affecting them at all. And that's the kind of things that are kind of a mystery to it. So,
Well, all of your symptoms pretty much lined up with infrasound.
right. And like I said, there's people I've taken out there where I don't get affected by it, like the mind speaking going on. And, they get, I've never had the thing where people talk about something feels like they're watching you. I've never had that feeling also out there. Yet I've had a few people go out there and tell me that, they said they feel like somebody's watching them. I kind of like, just chuckle and say, yeah, well, they're always here, so they're probably watching you anyway. So, there's nothing new there. I always tell people to, be prepared, because you never know what you're going to run into out there. But
I got a question for you.
Sure.
Can you go into a little more depth about the Sasquatch that was booted out of the group? I think we had talked about that a little bit last week.
Oh, we actually, like I said, there's two of them.
Two, okay.
Yeah, we have one at West Yankee site, and this one we just picked up a few months ago, and I was actually just talking to somebody about that. Somebody was asking me about that too. And the one at Charlie's been there for years. And he was part of a group when I first got out there, and I actually have a lot of recordings of a really large group, and that was the first one I ran into at the Charlie site when I was talking about them throwing rocks and stuff and throwing dirt on my head, and I was standing out in the dark. The wife locked me out of the car. He was part of that group. The group had left and went to the park entry to the east, I should say, of the site. It's about 8 miles or whatever. They seem off that direction. They're no longer there at the Charlie site, but he stayed behind. There's always been a creature there, and he kind of doesn't go too far out of that area. It seems like you're, and this is what I have to deal with people about is it says, yeah, he's constantly there. People don't want to believe that you have these constant encounters in this area. And it says, well, when they're there. I can't do anything about that, But most of the time, he's there, daytime and nighttime. Don't know why, but he was just left behind. You can put recording on the west end of west end of Charlie, and you can always pick him up out there. Now he likes to, taking his behavior is, I call him the old rock slinger, because he's the one busting my windshields out in my RV and my truck. but he likes to throw rocks, and he sits there and pounds on rocks all night, and gets into a little junk pile that sits right off to the right there. He does this constantly, repetitive habits he does. This is what he does all night. Is just play with rocks. Doesn't knock too often, but he does. But he's, for some reason, the males, both of these individuals on the west end of Yankee and at Charlie, are on the aggressive side. And it seems to be, the trigger seems to be game cameras. Now, I've had more problems with game cameras. I mean, he's crushed 2 of them. He's actually destroyed them and not get pictures. Something about game cameras, well, I shouldn't say just game cameras. He's sitting there. I actually was setting up and actually videotaping the site with a video camera I had set up on a tripod. And he made a bunch of racket. And I mean, he literally sounded like a bulldozer going through the brush and everything. And this was 11 o'clock in the morning, broad daylight. And he's making all kinds of this ruckus. And I first thought it might be an elk, because elk do that too when they're going through the brush with their antlers or whatever. So I thought, well, maybe it was an elk. So as I was standing there, all of a sudden the rocks started coming in. So I says, well, that's no elk. So, and like I said, it seems to be something to do with cameras. That's the only time I seem to get any kind of aggressive responses is when I put cameras into an area. Now, at the west end of Yankee, the individual does the same thing. As a matter of fact, I sent Tom, I don't know if he had gotten those, some clips I just got from the prior weekend of those responses. We're talking about the shotgun blast knocks. Now, I had just put game cameras down there and actually enclosed them. I should back it up a little bit. When I was talking about the problems with game cams, is that I believe they see the IR. I think everybody agrees to that. I've actually tried to enclose them in boxes and they're on trip things where I have to actually have a tripwire out there, and you have to trip them to pop them open to activate the cameras. This is where it's gotten to be, because I've trying to put magnetic cloths on them, trying to hide these signatures if it isn't just the IR they're detecting or whatever, trying to block off all these signals. And like I said, they're real frustrating. Game cams are trying to get pictures. It's just something about them that they do not like. I could put regular recording equipment out there, which I have parabolics and they have little boxes on them, and I put recorders in those, and it doesn't seem to faze them. They'll come up and play with the equipment, sniff it, pick it up, put it back down. Sometimes throw rocks at them, but they're not really aggressive responses. They are with the game cameras. Like I said, game cameras, they want to tear them off the trees, crush them. I've gotten some weird pictures of a hairy arm, and I have inclusive pictures where one's moving the camera around, and he's actually took a picture of the group sitting there, but it's because it's so blurry that I always find inclusive anything is blurry. So, but you can actually see the different colors of the individuals in there and make out most of them. But I don't like sharing all these things because, like I said, it is inconclusive since it is blurry. But some of the individuals I've actually seen out there is the blonde female. She's carrying actually a little one on her back. You can actually see the little feet hanging off. I'll have to send you this picture. But like I said, again, it's inconclusive, and you can't call it any kind of evidence because of the blur. I mean, it'd be nice if I could have got the big perfect picture, but I wasn't the one taking the pictures anyway. Like I said, there's Bigfoot moving the camera around. I was taking pictures of trees. There's like 5 photos in there where there's a tree in one part of it, and then there's 2 trees in the next. Then it's pointing at a rock, and then it actually grabs the group, as they're heading up to the side of a hill. And there's a big male in there, too. He's actually gray in color, light gray or whatever. And there's one cinnamon brown, dark brown, and the blonde, which is kind of unique because if somebody was setting up all these suits and everything, I would have to go out here and buy all these different suits, and like I says, you can pretty much see how big the creatures are too. Also, and that's the only thing I find interesting about the photo.
Did those game cameras have audio on them?
Yes.
Did you hear anything?
Well, now that particular one was set up for. I had 4 cameras set up around the site, and actually we found a little structure right there. I decided to set it up in this particular area because I had seen some footprints in there, so I had set 4 cameras in there. 3 of them were set for video, and 1 was set for just taking pictures. At the time all this incident happened, I was actually in California at the time on vacation. But the 3 video cameras had over 19 or 20 incidents happen at the same time as the stills were taking. But it was something throwing brush in front of all 3 cameras. You can actually see the video going off, and you can see the brush pile picking up bigger and bigger and bigger, and stuff actually flying in. But nothing was ever seen, no physical creatures were seen in the videos whatsoever. But something sort of just stay off to the side and threw stuff in front of the camera. You can also, there was little teepees, I would say, probably a foot tall, little piles of brush. They were built right on the outskirts of the capture images. You know how it goes in a V shape when it's looking out, just beyond the range of the IR, I would say. Just right on the outskirts of these cameras. Because when you're looking at it, through night vision, you can see that beam on there extend out. It looks like a flashlight. And these were just on the edge of that light ground, the outside of the light. And I had little structures built, and this little big-ass glyph, excuse my language, but it was a glyph out there was just left. And none of that stuff was there. The brush pile or anything was not there when I set up all these cameras.
When it comes to game cameras like that, you're pretty much not ever going to get them on film, because for them, that's the equivalent of you walking into your home and you seeing something that doesn't belong. You see it right away. Yep, they're the same way. So they're going to take it down, destroy it. You're not going to catch them on film.
No, and I totally agree. But most people say, well, they try it anyway. So I said, you know what? I'll just put the stuff out there until they destroy all the cameras. But it's $250 per camera, so you kind of hate to waste them out there. But I says, well, I'll put them out there and try these different things just to see if I can capture something. But I haven't been lucky at that whatsoever since then. So, like I said, as much as I try to do all these different things, trying to figure out the game camera things, I can't seem to capture them with those. Now, audio, I can catch them all day. Just about every time I put them out there, you catch some kind of activity going on. So, unfortunately, you just can't seem to get them on the game cams.
Well, a lot of times you'll see game cameras with pictures, and people will say, that's a Sasquatch, but 99.9% of the time it's a bear or a squirrel. Right. Or a raccoon or something like that. They're just close up, so they look bigger than what they are.
Right. And you know what? These cameras actually work pretty good. I mean, I've captured just about every type of wildlife out there, even wild turkeys and grouse and raccoons and squirrels, and they work perfectly. But it just seems to be with these creatures, they just don't. They seem to, know it's there. So, and like I said,
if it's something like a game camera, that just jumps out at them. They're going to avoid it. Little audio recorders and stuff that's smaller, it doesn't stick out as much. They'll be curious about it, but it's not like a game camera.
No, the game camera is just baffling to me. Like I said, and actually the things we call farm units are parabolics. I mean, they're on tripods. They're big. They're actually 3.5 feet, maybe so off the ground. They stick out like a sore thumb, and that bag camouflage them, but that's definitely not going to hide them. But they're big parabolics, and it didn't seem to bother them whatsoever. Matter of fact, they go around testing it more than anything else. They'll run up to it, trying to see what it does. And I've had that happen numerous times. you can tell they're testing it, and then they'll run back and forth to it 3 or 4 or 5 times, and then they'll finally just walk up to it, grab it, pick it up, smell it, and put it right exactly back down where it was at. And then maybe they'll go over and throw a few rocks at it or whatever, and then they'll just go off and do their normal activity. It doesn't bother them. And it's pretty good size. So that's why the game camera is always baffling. I says, well, I thought I'd put them in the boxes and camouflage them just the same way. But like I said, they still are able to, find these things. It doesn't do any good to try to hide them, because even when I tried to really camouflage them up and hide them good, they still find them. They know they're there or whatever. So, and like I said, I just put it out there for general principle, because, I don't want to waste the money. I mean, I spent a couple $1,000s on these cameras, so I got to do something with them. So not that I expect to get anything out of them.
Well, you never know until you try, right?
Right. And some people are getting, pictures of them, but I'm not one of them. All I can say is that in almost 13 years, I haven't been able to get any on, I've gotten hairy arms where that's because they got up there and they tore it off the tree and threw it like 50 feet, or I got something, and even then's in cahoots because all you see is hair, but it's funny how there's no other real creature out there's got this reddish hair, except for elk. And I says, well, I don't think the elk tore it off the tree,
What's some other encounters you've had out there?
I actually had, we're talking about encounter sightings. I actually was, Yankee. I was back there. Me and Chuck had run across some prints. I think they were about 14 or 15 inch tracks. And I didn't have my casting pack with me, which is a pack I carry all my stuff in. If we come across tracks or whatever, we can just pull it out and start casting. But I hadn't had it with me, so when I went back home, I said, those were pretty nice prints. It didn't have a lot of detail, but I might just cast them anyway. So, me and Chuck were discussing it. So I said, well, I'll go back out and I'll cast it. So it was about 3 days later, I went back out there, and this was in July. Again, it was broad daylight. This was, again, about 11 o'clock in the morning. And I was out there, and I said, well, I'll just pull into this spot here and jump out, and I'll grab my pack and go back to the brush here and go cast these prints. I had a good idea where they were at. I didn't remember exactly. But anyway, my mind was focused on that. And I hadn't even put on my gun, or I hadn't put, usually I carry a gun with me or whatever. But I says, it's a nice day, whatever. I'll just go tramping back there. Well, as you go to in Yankee Spot, this particular area, there's this big old growth log that's down. And it's probably 4 feet high, laying down. I mean, it's really an old growth log and everything. And as I was going around this corner, there's a kind of a limb sticking out. And I know you guys can't understand what I'm talking about, but I was going to go around this limb. It goes right next to the log. And then I proceeded, to turn right. And as I was doing that, there's a little bare spot on this by this log here. Right when I made this turn, this female, and I say female, is because I seen boobs. That's about all I saw. Was this creature jumped up? She jumped up and screamed, and she's no more than probably 6 feet away from me. And I decided, maybe thought the world would come to an end and everything. And I screamed like a little girl. That's what I always tell everybody. I said, she screamed and I screamed. I couldn't tell who most sounded like a woman. It was me or her. And I, basically turned away thinking I was going to be doomed for it. But she actually just turned around and ran. She ran across the road, and I kind of go, okay, trying to get my composure back. But like I said, I didn't get to see any facial features. I just remembered seeing before I kind of just pulled away, just seeing some boobs pop up, and she was blonde, and I got to see kind of like all this took within a second, I would even say, if I had that long, before she just tore off. She was lightning fast too. But I remember seeing she had like a mane on her back, coming from the top of her head down, and she was gone. So as I got my composure back and everything, I said, wow, that was kind of weird. So I says, well, I noticed I don't have my gun or anything, so I'm going to go ahead and go back, put that back on, and get a farm unit, which is a recorder we call a field audio recording monitor, and I'll stick it here, and then I'll go back out and get these castings and kind of look, see if she's still back there. But I heard her run across the road. The road wasn't that far away. But when I did that, I come back and set the unit, and then I went back and I kind of just looked around and everything. And I said, you know what, I'm hungry, so I was going to go back and eat my lunch. So I looked around back to where she ran it off, and I figured, well, she's long gone. And as I walked back to the truck and put my tailgate down and I was sitting eating my lunch, I said, just come out of there. And I heard all this ruckus going on in the brush back in there. I said, man, I was just there. I says, she must have come back. And sure enough, piece of wood comes flying out and hits near the farm and actually recorded a grunt. All I heard was a bunch of stuff going off. But she actually had come back, which surprised me. And I said it was good. 10 or 15 minutes later, she actually returned, and she was over there, had seen me set the equipment and everything, which I thought was strange. I said, wow, she just come back there and everything. So that was basically my encounter on that particular thing. But she was really close, but it made me more cautious when I'm out there now, because I says it totally caught me off guard. Now, what she was doing on the other side of the log, because I could clearly, when I was first going to which I wasn't paying attention, you could see over in that area. But like I said, I wasn't really paying attention, thinking there was any kind of creature there even. Just totally caught me off guard. But she very well, I discussed this with other researchers. Says I don't know exactly what she was doing. I might have popped up to her. She sat there and laid still the whole time. She might have been, or she could have been asleep, because it seemed like she was just as surprised as I was. Just from the screen, jumped up and screamed like it surprised her. So she may have been asleep, or, I just don't understand, because she would have seen my truck go flying by on the road, and she could hear me plain as day get out of my truck and start walking in there. But she waited till it was almost on top of her before, she reacted. It might have been because she thought I was going to come across that log, because I was just making the turn right there to go right, and she was off to the left of me. So anyway, that was my encounter on that. Any questions? That's just about it. Nothing really exciting. I don't think it's that exciting. So, but like I said, that's the closest I've ever been to him that I know of.
No,
this surprised me.
Yeah, no, I haven't been quite that close. I think 30 feet was 30 to 40 feet in the woods.
And that's comfortable. Trust me.
No, it's not comfortable at all. It's there's just something very unnerving about it. So
yeah,
very, very interesting.
And that made me. It's always unnerved me since then. And like I said, ever since then, I don't want to be caught off guard like that anymore, because I says, wow, I just can't believe I was so that complacent that I didn't realize, that it was there. So
I think having them that close to you is worse than seeing them, because you never know when they're going to come out.
Mm-hmm. And it's their unpredictability. Like I says things like that. I think she would have just stayed there and not made a sound or whatever, but known she was there. But like I says, I think she just thought I was going to come across that log. So and it makes me wonder how many other times you just walk by him. If you don't keep, especially when I'm talking about the independent males out there. Yeah, I always have to really be cautious of them. Because,
if you saw that one, you can be rest assured there were others close by.
Right. And I always tell everybody, I always think there's 3 out there. But in this particular case, and the audio tells a lot of the story, so I'm putting them out there. So I do know these are single individual males, or I should say single individuals. It could be a female for all I know, but because their size, like I said, the one Charlie I've seen, he's 8'2", and that's because I was talking about the nub I seen underneath the tree and everything. But seeing him, I know it's a male. So,
in my experience, and Cuz, chime in on this if you want to. Females usually have a much narrower foot than the males. You ever come across that, Cuz?
Are you talking to me or?
I was talking to Will.
Sorry, I had the mic.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, Will's.
I had my mic muted. That's not typically something you can tell from feet.
Yeah, I'm no footprint expert, that's for sure. But I've always been told, or it should be told. I don't like listen to a lot of people's their stories with no experience, but they always saying like 15 inches and below is females, and I said, well, that's or it could be juveniles or whatever. That could be very well true. I'm not Dr. Meldrum or whoever expert in that field. I'm not an academic when it comes to that stuff. So.
Well, the way it's always been is typically, not 100%, but typically 13 inches and up are adults, and anything below that's usually a juvie.
And I found 10-inch, feet out there. I assume they're juveniles or whatever. A lot of those 10, 8-inch, 6-inch.
Yeah.
And that's, again, and they seem to be the tracks that you can actually track it back there in a quarter mile. You can find it. You find these trackways or whatever, and it seems to be the juveniles are the ones leaving this, and that the adult ones you very seldom, like the 17-inch tracks or whatever, I run across. You might get 2 or 3 of those, and as far as it seems to go, they seem to walk on logs or rocks or whatever, and kind of lose track of them. But the juveniles, in my particular case, this is. I've been able to sit there and follow these things back going, up to the side of a hill and everything. And I thought, well, maybe there's not, it might be in training or still or whatever. I thought it was kind of, as it comes to my mind, but they seem to be a lot easier to track, these smaller prints.
If you can get a whole bunch of different size prints, that can give you an idea of how many's in the group. But as far as it being, like Will was saying, usually if it's a large foot, it's the adults. And if it's the smaller, obviously it's the juvenile.
Mm-hmm. Now, one particular case where on the side of a hill, and this is what we were talking about, eating Salao. There's one particular pathway. I find this over at, we call it the zebra site, where it goes up the side of a hill. And it's really a pretty good steep sized hill, but it's right next to a little creek. And they seem to use this little pathway a lot. But it's real muddy along there. And we'll find a lot of 6 and 8-inch tracks, but we'll find, maybe a 15-inch track going with it. And in this particular case, when I was saying, we were documenting Salao, is that it was partially snow. It was coming into the spring where this stuff was melting off. And it's still difficult. There was still like a foot of snow on the roads and stuff. So it was pretty, it wasn't normal for people to go in there. At least we get people brush picking or whatever. And this is actually, zebra site's probably up in a higher elevation, really far back. And we get people that pick Salao, I think for some kind of tea or whatever. I don't know exactly what it is. But anyway, this is down a hillside. I would say probably a quarter mile down in there, just go straight down. It was like, I can't remember what we call them, but this area's pulled out where they used to pull trees out, and it's clear cut going all the way down. It's just little channels, we call it. But anyway, what we found when we were going down, we found footprints, going through partly through the snow and up through these muddy areas. And we were finding 6 and 8-inch tracks and 15-inch track. We were finding these little piles of Salao. And it was, it looked like it had been ripped up, but it was like something was eating they were only like 6-8 inches, but it's like somebody was carrying big bundles of these, eating them along the way, and these little piles were falling out on the ground. And they fall right on, you could tell they were fresh. As they would fall on top of the snow, they were, curly leaves and everything. So we assumed that they were eating this, and that's all you can do because we didn't see them doing it. But these little piles were going all the way back up this hill. And what was interesting to find out is Salao is actually an appetite suppressant. And I says, wow, that would kind of make sense because if they're up in these higher elevations in the wintertime, this would be something that they can eat a lot of. Now, we just documented that, is the thing that we found. So you can't really precisely say that's exactly what it is, but it made more sense because, like I says, on top of the hill there, if it was slough pickers or what these people say, well, it was human interference, they would actually pick from those piles up there. I mean, it's a whole bunch of groves of this slough. It didn't make sense to walk all the way down, a quarter mile down this hillside to go pick the slough and take it all the way back up there where they would have put it in their car and take it from there. So anyway, so that's what we were, documenting on that part. But I thought it was interesting, that it's sloughs they were eating, and I said it makes pretty good sense, but it's still inconclusive and stuff when you're collecting data to say that's exactly what it was, unless you've actually seen them doing it. But I said with the footprints and little piles and everything, I said that I thought that was pretty good evidence to to say that's what's going on. Trying to think anything else had besides the infrasound and everything, the cameras being correct.
Well, it definitely sounds like you got a pretty active area out there to keep you busy.
Yeah, and it never seems to be, especially from over the years, like I says, a lot of people don't understand, and I always want to bring this people's attention, is that when they say, well, they're used to chance encounters, people hiking out there and running these creatures and everything, but I always tell people, say, well, these are researchers like Yankee. It's been going on year after year after year.
Have you noticed any definite patterns in those different areas from them? As far as
Well, for activity-wise and everything, yes, that's how we the males track the males in their particular areas. Because when I put out equipment out there, it's strung out over several miles. And I should say, like Yankee site, the east of it, we go east, west, south, northeast, and everything. And this was within a mile of the site all the way around it. I have several parabolics and, lots of recorders going. But I try to keep one going at Charlie and one at West End of Yankee, one at northeast side of Yankee. The east side of Yankee is where we think right now, this is speculation, that this is actually a hunting area because they just seem to be in there beating the heck out of the brush. I haven't been able to associate exactly what the activity is yet until you get back in and prove that if it's hunting, we need to find something they were hunting out there, some kind of proof of some kind of carcass or bug kills or whatever. But it seems to be what's going on because, like I says, you got several creatures out there, at least 7 or so, beating the brush, knocking to one another, and moving in certain directions. Like they always seem to be going from the south to the north, and they're hanging around the area. And like I said, they're just beating the brush for hours. Now, people with more experience than that, like Will, maybe he can alliterate to something what's going on, but I can't figure out other than that what it would be. There's the males themselves, the single ones, they just do a little knocking and breaking branches, and you hear moving logs. Big, huge logs out there. But they seem to be repetitive, and you can tell they're by themselves. Where the group, you can hear several individuals, in these audios, and you can set it out there all night long, and this goes on for hours. I literally, when I have to clip stuff, I can hear, an hour. I can take an hour of activity out of a 14-hour part where it's still going on, and it all sounds the same. We're just beating the brush now until you find some kind of evidence of something else going on. I can't find structures out there in these particular areas, so there can't be any structure building. You just find some trees, broken off or whatever. You can't really say they're marking trails or whatever. Maybe so, but like I said, you still got to find some kind of evidence that this stuff's going on. So to say say it is. So, and I record a lot of this stuff, week after week after week, trying to figure out what it is. David, have you had anything, like that happen in your areas, or?
It depends on the time of year. There'll be times where they'll go through an area to get to their hunting area or their
Mhm.
feeding area, and that can get confusing sometimes because they'll switch up their patterns. But it just depends on the time of year around here.
Right, and I tell people it's being consistent. People think you know it all. It says no, I can never tell you exactly a spot they're going to be, but I can tell you what general area they're going to be for that time of year. Like he says, any time now they're going to move up to the upper elevations. The group at Yankee's going to move in the higher elevation any time now.
The main thing you want to do is not be in an area when you know they're going to be there.
Right, and most of the time I just set my equipment. My equipment will be right, and as I get lucky, it'll be right in the middle of the activity going on. But yeah, you definitely don't want to be in these areas that's going on. We're in the general area, but we're not in I don't try to go into their spots because we know that's pretty a bad thing. And like I said, I'm trying to get record their natural behaviors anyway, and not interfere with what they're actually doing, before I can figure out what it is. Because anytime you try to interact or whatever, it changes. They're going to change their behaviors or change their activities. So
it takes a lot of patience.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't. When I talk to people in general, and I'm sure we can all relate to this. You have these people you take out there, and I actually could probably write a book better on the people's personalities than I can with these creatures, because there's some people I take out there, it just makes me roll my eyes and want to, pull my hair out. And don't get me wrong, I've met a lot of great people in this, in doing this field and stuff, but there's been a few individuals I take out there that I just want to choke them to death because of the things they come up with, and like I said, I could write a book. Like it says, I had the intellectual guy, the claim jumper guy. I'm sure you all can relate to these kind of people that have taken out their looky-loos. Most people want you to do, like you're an entertainer, want to, entertain them, set them up for some kind of dinner and a show, I call it. They want you to make something happen, and you don't seem to understand. I can't make these creatures do anything, and I can't, tell you the exact spot they're going to be, but I can tell you they're in the within a mile of us, somewhere out there. And I tell people, if you bring equipment and everything, you can hear these things too, like I hear out there. But most people just don't seem to get it, and fortunately, I said I've had a few people who just couldn't take too much of his stuff, and I just can't have anything to do with them because they're just messing up your kind of research, and they're more interested in witnessing or experiencing it than to find any kind of real answers.
Ben, that's what I've told people is, we're not going to the zoo. We're not even going to look for elk or bear or deer or a normal creature. We're looking for something that's very, very different than anything else that's out there. And we have no control over that. I've told Will in the past, I said, my biggest fear when he comes up here and we go looking for these things, I have two big fears. Number one is that we'll get out there and we won't have anything. We won't encounter a thing. My second biggest fear is we're going to get out there and we do encounter them. So, well, listen, with that said, Ben, thank you for doing a part 2, and I'm hoping that you will stay in touch with us. And the guys that say, no, that's nothing, don't even bother taking a picture of it, ignore them. Take a picture of it and say, well, I'm just going to go ahead and do it anyway. So keep in touch. Yeah.
No, Ben.
Yeah, Ben.
It's great talking to you guys. It's nice to have the experience to talk to. Like I says, there's fellow people that you can relate these experiences. Like I says, considering the Will's experience, you guys' experience, I'm like a novice still out there, even doing this for 13 years. I says there's still a lot to learn from me and everything. And like I says, I don't claim to know anything, guards, on the subject because I just experienced what I just like to share what's going on out there. That's all it is that I'm hearing. So. But
just a lot of fun. Be careful.
Oh yeah, I do this by myself, and that's why I try to explain to people. It says, I can't go do these things like they want me to do. Go running towards something and take pictures. Well, that could get me hurt. You know, they love to sit there and tell you that kind of stuff. Oh, I would have did this or that. And I said,
No,
well,
they
yeah,
wouldn't.
you're not out there. I am.
Yep.
You know,
I tell
it's
you what,
okay
you're
if
coming out
I
on the
make
next
mistake and,
expedition.
you know,
Absolutely. I'm even going to give you a camera, and I want to film
Yeah.
you filming them. And whoa, what happened to him?
yeah, and that's exactly what it is. They say, well, I guess we shouldn't have done that one. Ben just proved that point to us. Yeah, well, you're telling me to do that. You know, other people say that. Well, you should go down into that draw and everything with some of these males that are rogue, and that's not a good
It could be
idea at
a
all.
fatal mistake.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Well, I said that's, if anything, you learn from experience not to do those kind of things.
Right.
You know.
Well, Ben, listen.
Yeah. So, like,
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
anyway, go ahead.
I was just saying, I'm going to be back up
No,
your way
I-
to see
hey,
you, so
in the show.
I'm going to be back up your way.
Yeah, great.
I don't know exactly when yet, but I'll text you and let you know when I'm coming back up.
Hey, well, hopefully you bring Tom and everybody else with
That's-
you. Is more.
That's the
more
plan.
merry.
That's the plan.
Hey, I said I got your stuff set up for you. Hey, I'll get you in the RV. Got your equipment if you need it.
We got lots of
You know,
equipment.
it'd be great to go out with somebody with some experience. I'm telling you, not to deal with the regular knuckleheads I've had to deal with. I'm
I
telling
hear
you.
you there. All right,
And
everyone.
I'm sure you can relate.
I can relate. Yep. All right, everyone. Well, listen. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, everyone, for stopping by.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning, @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out there.